Hello YouTube, deranged clown here. You'll note the clown hair. I might need to get that cut. I don't know. So I want to do a video about the next Trump executive order that I want to cover. Just want to make clear a couple of things first and foremost. Number one, this is purely supplemental at best. There are people who are far smarter than I could ever hope to be. And, if you want anything authoritative, they're the place to go. Me, I'm just someone trying to have a YouTube channel with a cohesive theme rather than just a bunch of random stuff or negative, sad stuff. So, anyways, let me see, that's the first thing. So, supplemental at best is what all this is. Oh yeah, it's cold outside, so that's why I'm here inside. I don't know. I forgot the rest of it all. So, anyways, this executive order is guaranteeing the state's protection against invasion. Guaranteeing the state's protection against invasion. So, again, oh yeah, I guess that's another thing I wanted to point out before I get into this executive order is, don't take my word for it. You can go to the White House webpage. They have them all. That's the source of all these executive orders is from the White House website. I go there and I print them out. So this is straight from the source. And it's really cool that we have access to that directive information. And also it's written in English and not legalese. Recently in the world of law, they've been really pushing to get lawyers to go from writing in purely legal, esoteric terms to English that most people would get. So that's pretty cool, especially for a rolling pin in a drawer full of sharp knives like yours truly, the deranged clown. Oh, got a little... Boy, I might have to get that haircut. Anyways, so, date of the executive order is January 20th. I love this phrase, by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution. America's getting better. And the laws of the United States, I hereby proclaim an essential feature of any sovereign nation is the existence of territorial boundaries and the inherent authority to decide who and what may cross those boundaries. The Supreme Court of the United States has described this power as, quote, a, quote, fundamental act of sovereignty, end quote, which, quote, stems not alone from legislative power, but is inherent in the executive power to control the foreign affairs of the nation, end quote. And the case that's referred to as U.S. XREL KNAUFF versus SHUGHNESSY. I don't know how to pronounce those. I'm not going to try. Case in 1950. The Supreme Court, then it goes on, as recognized inherent right and duty of the executive branch to defend our national sovereignty. And then it goes on, from what I can see, is that what the Supreme Court has said is that the executive branch has the authority and the power, and the legislative branch shares that power with the president, and they lay out the guidelines. Prescribes a procedure concerning the admissibility of aliens. So the president has the power, but the legislative branch writes the manual. The Congress has, in establishing, quote, an uniform rule of naturalization, end quote, created a complex and comprehensive federal scheme in the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA. For you law nerds out there, it's 8 USC 1101 at SEQ. It is Latin for toward, I believe. At sequenter. So I don't know what the Latin is on that. My Latin's really rusty. It's not much to begin with, but then it goes on to say, to control the entry and exit of people and goods across the borders of the United States. So, before I begin this, I am pro-immigrant. I may even be an immigrant in another country, possibly. So I'm all for immigration. I think America is a melting pot. And I'm glad we have those rules. I'm glad the power has been divided. But as it says, going on, and I'm just summarizing again, I highly recommend to just go to the White House webpage. They have all these executive orders in the original text. Just don't take my word for it. I'm just a deranged clown, right? Anyways, it just goes on to say, in routine circumstances, this complex and comprehensive scheme can protect the national sovereignty of the United States by facilitating the admission of individuals whose presence serves the national interest and preventing the admission of those who do not, such as those aliens who pose threats to public health, and then it cites some sections. This is standard international stuff. Let's say I were to decide to emigrate to Ukraine. In fact, I've actually looked into that. Those of you who know me will know more about the story, but I looked into it. And if you go to Ukraine, you have to have proof that you have insurance. And there's like a stack of documentation you got to have to even be allowed in the borders of Ukraine. So this is just standard stuff here. I mean, this is not Trump stuff. This is just standard border. I don't care what country it is. This is just standard border stuff. So prospective immigrants who use the visa system are screened for such health, safety, and security concerns while outside of the United States, and are not permitted to enter the United States until they establish that they are eligible to be admitted as a matter of law and should be admitted as a matter of discretion. This is just standard stuff here, all right? Just to touch on a few things, health. Okay, we all know about COVID, right? It came from China, from the Wuhan laboratories, all right? We don't want another COVID. That first one's pretty bad, right? Safety, don't want gangs. Security concerns, terrorism. All right? Pretty simple stuff. Admitted as a matter of law. Okay, so like I said, I think immigration's great, but you need to do it legally. If I do it, and I may try going through another country's process, I would have to do it by law. I would never sneak across the border and make up some just, pop culture, political excuse for a story. I do it the right way, and everything's good. I think immigrants and citizens of the United States that's something we can all agree. Do it legally, and things are great. But then it goes on to say that because of the let me see. There's problems with the screening because, if the system is overwhelmed, the screening process can be overwhelmed. So basically, it negates the law by de facto overwhelming of the process. And due to significant information gaps, particularly in the border environment and processing times, federal officials do not have the ability to verify with certainty the criminal record or national security risks associated with the illegal entry of every alien at the southern border as required by da-di-da-di-da. Then it goes on to say that people across the border nor do aliens who illegally cross the southern border readily provide comprehensive background information from their home countries to federal law enforcement officials. And I would wonder, even if they did, maybe they forged it. We know about the gangs and the cartels. Then it goes on to say, and then it talks about that. Public safety and national security risks in such an environment are heightened by the presence of and control of territory by international cartels and other transnational criminal organizations on the other side of the southern border, as well as terrorists and other malign actors who intend to harm the United States and the American people. And then it goes on to say that, combined with the sheer number of people crossing the border, it just makes it like there's no border there. I think that's a really good point. I just remember working at a call center, and we learned about fraud, and we learned that organized crime is becoming transnational. It's going very international. So, you really can't pin the criminals down to one country. And if they're doing that with fraud, they're going to be doing that with gangs and terrorists. So then it goes on to talk about public health. The federal government currently lacks an effective operational capability to screen all illegal aliens crossing the southern border for communicable diseases of public health concern as required by and cites the law. Effectively, no aliens who illegally enter the United States provide federal officials at the southern border with their comprehensive health information as a lawful immigrant would. As a result, innumerable aliens potentially carrying communicable diseases of public health significance illegally cross the southern border and enter communities across the United States. Going back to Ukraine, I would need to show I have a clean bill of health to be allowed into Ukraine. I would have to show I have insurance, health insurance. It's mandatory. This is basic stuff. And then just the stuff about, people who don't have the documentation, and they come in here and they bring in these foreign diseases. All right. We already dealt with the one, COVID. Do we want another COVID? I sure don't. Okay. I even got the shots, the boosters. I got the first and the second COVID shot. I got the boosters. I don't want to go through that again. Come on. Seriously? And then it goes on to say at least 8 million illegal aliens were found on the border over the past 4 years, plus some came through. And because of that, the law's provisions were ineffective because just a sheer number. Talks about significant costs and constraints upon the states, which have collectively spent billions of dollars in providing medical care and related human services. So, yeah, if you want your free Obamacare, okay, well, you're going to be paying a lot more and getting less service. So, something to think about there. And and have spent considerable amounts of increased law enforcement costs associated with the presence of these illegal aliens within their boundaries. And I'm talking about this, to me, seems like it's more than about just, criminals, it's victims too. In joining the Union, the states agreed to surrender much of their sovereignty and join the Union in exchange for the federal government's promise in Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution to protect each of the states against invasion. So that goes back to the history of the political history. So, yeah. And I have determined that the current state of the southern border reveals that the federal government has failed in fulfilling this obligation to the states, and hereby declare that an invasion is ongoing at the southern border, which requires the federal government to take measures to fulfill its obligation to the states. So when we were under the Articles of Confederation, we were pretty much like many nations. And the Constitution was proposed, and like this points out, the state said, okay, we'll give up control over the borders, but the federal government needs to protect the outside border, but we'll let the federal government take over our borders. And it gets, into like interstate commerce and whatnot. But if the federal government can't do it, and if the states aren't equipped or allowed to, where's our borders? A president has tools, has certain emergency tools. The INA provides the president with certain emergency tools. So, yeah, there you go. One of them is suspending the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants. So the president can shut down the border, and that's written right into the legislation. That's one of the things the president can do. I love the American law, the way it's written. Just brilliant. This statute, quote, exudes deference to the president in every clause. Trump versus Hawaii, 2018. And then it goes on to say that the president does have a say in the legislative laws. Then goes through history that has been used. This authority necessarily includes the right to deny the physical entry of aliens into the United States and impose restrictions on access to portions of the immigration systems, particularly when the number of aliens illegally crossing the southern border prevents the federal government from obtaining operational control of the border. So, these are very well written. And I just think about Trump when he was in office the first time, and when he banned Chinese people from coming in when COVID was still a Chinese thing, and he banned people from China because China was exporting their sick citizens around the world. Yeah, thanks, China. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to get into that. That's all I'm going to say. So sometimes, if nothing else, for the sake of public health, you just got to exclude certain people. And you cannot tell me that if you have all these people coming in, that there's not people who are not going to spread stuff. I'm not saying they're bad people. It's just, they're just not going to, we just can't have them spread stuff. That's why there's medical exams. That's why there's records. That's why there's screenings. And if they don't have those screenings, I don't care what your political view is. It's pretty scary stuff. Um, so, president also has the right, invokes his authority to control the foreign affairs of the United States, and to rapidly repatriate them to an alternative location. So deportation, go home. Go home, get your life squared away, and do it legally, and you're welcome here. And then it says he's determined that the current situation at the southern border qualifies as an invasion, and cites his authority and power. This is what he's ordering: suspension of entry, that the entry into the United States on or after the date of this order, or January 20th, of aliens engaged in the invasion, and by that I mean people crossing the borders, not doing it the right way, just going through the gate after doing the paperwork at the consulate. But yeah. Let's see what else. Sorry for the length of this video. This is a long executive order. The entry into the United States on or after the date of this order of aliens engaged in the invasion across the southern border is detrimental to the interests of the United States. And then it goes on, I therefore direct that entry into the United States of such aliens be suspended until I issue a finding that the invasion at the southern border has ceased. So if you're at the southern border, you can't just say, I surrender, where's my goodies? You're just going to be sent packing home. So, sorry. Imposition on restrictions on entry for aliens invading the United States. Says that illegal aliens who are here after this executive order do not have access to portions of immigration law. Again, the president and the legislature work together, and they can't use that to continue staying in the United States. Suspension of and restriction on entry for aliens posing public health, safety, or national security risks. Again, this is just basic common sense. If you go to any other country, you're going to run into this. So it's not xenophobia. So, this is a big one. I hereby proclaim, and refers to sections of international immigration law, federal government law, that the entry into the United States on or after the date of this order of any alien who fails before entering the United States to provide federal officials with sufficient medical information and reliable criminal history and background information as to enable fulfillment of the requirements of and lists sections of the law is detrimental to the interests of the United States. I therefore direct that entry into the United States of such aliens be suspended and restrict their access to provisions of the INA that would permit their continued presence in the United States, including but not limited to section, and refers to the International Naturalization Act. I think that's what INA stands for. Okay. This is like what Ukraine does. You don't have the paperwork, you're not entering. I love it, and I'm glad we got the same policy now. And section 4, I hereby suspend the physical entry of any alien engaged in the invasion across the southern border of the United States and direct the Secretary of Homeland Security in coordination with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General to take appropriate actions as it may be necessary to achieve the objectives of this proclamation until I issue a finding that the invasion of the southern border has ceased. So this is more like a moratorium. It's not like slam the door shut. And people can no longer just hold up their hands and say, I surrender, and get in. It's just not going to work like that now. This is something that's been getting a lot of press. Operational actions to repel the invasion. This is Section 5. The Secretary of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, shall take all appropriate action to repeal, repatriate, and remove any alien engaged in the invasion across the southern border of the United States on or after the date of this order, whether as an exercise of the suspension power in this law, or as an exercise of my delegated authority under the Constitution of the United States, until I issue a finding, I referring to Trump, issue a finding that the invasion of the southern border has ceased. We can send troops to the border now. And again, you can't just hold up your hands to the border security people and say, oh, I surrender. Where's my goodies? Without paperwork, without documentation of your background, without medical records, without background checks to make sure you're not a terrorist. And this applies to all nations, not just one. This is some people when they say, well, you're just being racist. No, this applies to all nations. The southern border is being crossed by many, many nations. That's one of the big things. So, boy, thanks for sticking it out with this long video. It's 27 minutes now. Anyways, so I really like this. I think this is good. Again, I do support immigration. I would just say this. Don't sneak across the border. Go to the consulate. Go to the ambassador. Do your paperwork. Work things out. We live in the age of the internet where, you can communicate across, where we can communicate internationally instantaneously. This is 2025, right? And so we can do that. Get your paperwork lined up, everything, get it going, go to the front gate, guards walk out, show the paperwork, the guards walk back in, they do the verifications, they walk back out, open the gate, welcome to America, off you go. That's the way it's done. When I possibly go to Ukraine, that's what I'll be doing. And I expect that of all people who enter the United States. Do it legally. That's all I ask. And I really like this executive order. So cool. All right.